Today we will be discussing about water-based movements. The objectives for today's study will be to understand the concepts of water as a fundamental right. Then we will understand about some major water-based movements in India. Third, we will be talking about the National Water Conservation Policy. Now, water as a fundamental basis for all civilization. Water quality and quantity are the basics for well-being of each and every society. The studies reveal that 20% of world's population do not have access to safe drinking water. 40% of people do not even have sufficient water for adequate living. More than 2.2 million people die each year from disease related to contaminated drinking water. It is expected that by the year 2050, water scarcity will affect 2 to 7 billion people out of the total 9.3 billion global population. In India, with 16% of world's population, has only 4% of fresh water resources. In India, the overexploitation of land, water, deforestation all across the country has caused this acute water scarcity. The per capita availability of water in India has dropped from 5,000 cubic meters in a year in the year 1947 to less than 2,000 cubic meters in the year 2002. It is expected that the drop will go further below 1,500 cubic meters by the year 2025. In 15 states, the groundwater level has fallen down at a rate of 5 to 7% every year. 12 of the major Indian rivers have been declared polluted, and according to hydrologists, there are no more freshwater reserves in India. Accounting for 16% of world's population, 2.45% of the landmass and 4% of water resources, India is facing an acute water crisis. In many cases, the causes of droughts and floods can be pointed out to big dams. In this process, the traditional forms of water conservation are basically abandoned. In India, the tribals and other marginalized people are the most affected group as a result of construction of big dams and massive deforestations associated with it. According to the preamble of North India Canal and Drainage Act 1873, the provisional government was the sole authority which had the power to use and control all of the rivers and streams flowing in natural channels and of all the lakes and other natural collections of still water. The state could control these resources only by ensuring that it would not thereby inflict injuries or disrupt the traditional supplies. In the last 2 decades, Supreme Court of India as well as other high courts have issued a series of verdicts accordingly for the right of enjoyment of pollution-free water as a basic human right for all these tribal and marginalized people. At the same time, several states have decentralized the responsibilities of irrigation management from government agencies to Water Users Association to ensure people's participation in water conservation and management. Now coming to some of the major water-based movements that happened in India. One of the biggest water-based movement that happened in India and probably is still going on is the Narmada Bachao Andolan. The river Narmada originates from Amarkantak in the Maikal range situated in the Shadal district of Madhya Pradesh. The altitude of the river bed is around 1051 meters, which comes to 3468 feet. Hereon, the river travels down to the west and encounters almost 41 major tributaries across its path. The total catchment area of the river is almost 98,796.8 square kilometers, comprising of the Maikal range in the east, the Vindhya range in the north, and the Satpura range in the south. The river crawls following down the districts of Shahdal, Mandla, Jabalpur, Narsinghpur, Hoshangabad, Khandwa, Khargon districts of Madhya Pradesh. The river forms a formidable boundary between the Jhabua district of Madhya Pradesh and Dhulia district in Maharashtra and in the Baroda-Bharuch districts in Gujarat. Traversing through the Bharuch district, the river finally terminates into the Gulf of Cambay. Now, this big river has intense pressure of human abuse on resulting from which the river basin has been degraded to a terrible extent. Some possible reasons of the mounting pressure on the river basin can be given to the exorbitant population pressure, migration, haphazard settlements, unorganized land usage, agricultural extensions, the continuous demand for timber, fodder, fuel, overgrazing, intrusions, and so on. Narmada entered Gujarat through the Surpaneshwar, which forms roughly a 35-kilometer boundary between Maharashtra and Gujarat. The total length of Narmada in Gujarat is approximately 165 kilometers. The catchment area of Narmada in Gujarat is around 10,000 square kilometers. This particular area is of great interest as this particular area is absolutely inhabited by tribal people which precisely do not belong to Gujarat. It is often claimed that the largest point of discord is that the biggest beneficiary to reap benefit from the Narmada project will be Gujarat, but this will be done at the cost of two other states which are Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. Now locating the path of the struggle. Gujarat proposed this idea to build dam before the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal in the year 1969. The state claimed that the dams would build up a corpus supply of water that could be supplied to these impoverished areas, besides providing clean water, irrigation, and electricity. Challenging this proposal, Medha Patkar organized a 36-day march as a symbol of solidarity among neighboring states of Narmada Valley, as well as a direct challenge to the government and the World Bank. She organized this march that lasted for 36 days as a symbol of protest in order to instigate the World Bank and to state to withdraw such a project. The project has already been suspended on behest of Ministry of Environment. Now let us talk a bit about the emergence of Medha Patkar. In 1985, this news was broken to the central and eastern parts of the country that Medha Patkar and a few of her colleagues have begun visiting the dam site. She was shocked at the magnitude of displacement and therefore founded the Narmada Charangrast Samiti or NCS, which finally developed into the Narmada Bachao Andolan in collaboration of NCS with other Gandhian organizations in the states of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. In the next year, that is in 1986, the World Bank was pleaded by the state to back the Sardar Sarovar project. Patkar realized that in order to suspend this project, the World Bank must be restrained to terminate the construction of the Sardar Sarovar Dam. Medha and her colleagues took long marches from Madhya Pradesh to the dam site as a mark of protest against this proposal. A 36 days march became a symbol of solidarity among the neighboring states of Narmada Valley as well as a direct challenge to government and the World Bank. In 1993, in association with Environment Defence Fund and International River Network, the Narmada Bachao Andolan or NBA compelled the World Bank to suspend its proposal for the dam. In 1995, the Supreme Court was persuaded to delay the construction process till further review of the rehabilitation process has been done. Now, let's assess the impact of this Sardar Sarovar project on ecology and social environment. It is a fact that in the last decade, Gujarat has destroyed major chunk of its forest belt and has exploited these tribal regions starting from Danta state in the north to Ganges in south. According to the reports, the principal forest ranger collection of Rajpipla, Rajendra Sharma stated that between 1970 to 1990, the forest which extended from west of Rajpipla has been decimated systematically. The systemic and organized forest felling has led to a recession of forest area by about 60 kilometers to the east of Rajpipla. The forest area actually belonged to the tribal rooted people who were uprooted from their native places and were thrown out. The local Bhil tribes, who were practically dependent on these forests, were literally shunned away from their abodes. The wildlife has also been utterly disrupted and ecology was badly tampered. Now, swallowing the villages in just a gulp. The landless laborers who stayed nearby the villages and made their ends meet by mining the sand collected from the riverbed would suffer a lot after the building of the Sardar Sarovar Dam. The reservoir was now too deep for them to go down and scrape the sand from them. This was the first reason. And secondly, the perennial flow of the river that recurrently pumped new sand into the bank would be stopped forever. Not only the sand miners, but also the fisher people, the boat persons, and others who earned their livelihood from the river would also be destroyed. Villages like Bhil Khera was badly destroyed. Village shopkeepers, potters, carpenters were badly affected. For an instant, when the Bargi Dam was erected on the river Narmada near Jabalpur, villages located several hundred kilometers downstream had to surrender their lucrative summer bed crop of melons and watermelons as the water flow trends was severely altered. When the Sardar Sarovar Dam was built, the water bed started diverting. The rich estuarine fisheries in the downstream area of the Narmada Valley were likely to collapse. As the dam was being built up on the Narmada, water channels started changing dramatically. Also, Narmada is a river of religious importance as it is considered as one of the most important and sacred rivers in the country. It entails a unique custom of river parikrama or circumnavigation that is typically surrounded and celebrated across the river. The dam, those built and under construction, have submerged drastically this route of parikrama. Villages on the river bank have also been submerged under the thrust of water, and the reservoir has generated new bunch of villages on the new banks. The region with its natural resource would provide a bedrock for wealth for its local men who would check out their living from that zone. The Sardar Sarovar Dam would gulp and make a massacre of the quiet villagers of Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. Now, before we further go into understanding the impact of this Sardar Sarovar project, it's time for a small quiz. What percent of world's population does not have access to safe drinking water? Option A, 20%, option B, 40%, option C, 55%, option D, 10%. And the right answer is option A, 20%. Now, coming to the pathos of tribal resettlement. Many tribal villages were getting submerged under the river, and the local inhabitants had no resort but to relocate themselves, often to very uninhabitable sites. According to the agreement, Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal, for instance, a village Anjanwada, a small village in Maharashtra on the bank of Narmada, was acquired the right to decide whether they wanted to settle in Madhya Pradesh or to relocate in Gujarat. The MP government was not ready to bear this headache. They were more eager to dispose its tribal evictees to Gujarat, let Gujarat handle them. The situation was particularly trying because there was a constant pressure of displacement from Maheshwar, Narmada Sagar, Omkareshwar, and all other dams that were scheduled upstreams. The villagers, on the other hand, did not want to migrate to Gujarat. They have already traveled to the resettlement sites and experienced their share of misery. Waterlogged fields, no livestock, fragmented families, hostile neighbors, no commons to collect fuels and fodders. This sums up to the experience of most Adivasis of Madhya Pradesh who were given land in Gujarat. The displaced tribal men did not want to move. In most cases, neither the state of Madhya Pradesh nor Gujarat could provide them with their basic requirements. The tragic fact remained that even the modest of requirements were denied to them by their host state, be it Madhya Pradesh or Gujarat. There were probably some men who turned out to benefit from this whole process of relocation and facilitating this process. Amte Patkar called them motivator, who earns a commission from every person he delivers to the door of the doob officer or the submergence officer. Bhaviskar narrated a story of a man, Dhankia, who was the ex-sarpanch of a nearby village, Kaka Dasila, who reasonable amount of land in his village was resettled as a unit. Dhankia believed to have incurred profit to a lucrative range from this settlement drive. He struck a business by eliciting felling trees of teak trees from this forest region and selling this timber to Gujarat. He also acquired money from every family he persuaded for relocating, and after they finally left the state, he took away their belongings. The motivator is usually one of higher power or status in the village, such as the sarpanch or some kind of indigenous leader that Bhaviskar mentioned. Usually, such powerful people take an upper hand on the poor marginalized villagers and curtail their bargain capacity even more. Bhaviskar said for hustlers like Dhankia, it was both an easy and appealing way to earn more money. Nevertheless, it must be remembered that most of the locals in the dam site are poor men who can neither manipulate these common masses like these huskers, nor they accumulate such wealth that they can curtail it from illicit earnings. Therefore, the surroundings of Sardar Sarovar project, the task of displacement and relocation became a muddy affair, which definitely a class of people started skimming the cream out. It was those people who were the reasonably advantageous people of the community and who can negotiate properly with the government was able to derive their own benefits. Though the dam construction work was suspended in the year 1994 after NBA activists managed to get a stay order from Supreme Court on the ground of environmental and relocation issues, the suspension could not be retained for long. The construction work was restored after Supreme Court issued an order in the year 1999 to resume the construction once again. This was done on a precondition that the dam height was to be elevated in phases after regular reviewing of the conditions for resettlement process. After this Narmada verdict by the Supreme Court, the matter became more complicated and political. The people launched Manav Adhikar Yatra in October 2000 and staged protest in front of Supreme Court to criticize this verdict. The government were now using the same verdict to go ahead with the submergence of valley and displace people without proper rehabilitation. It did not only have a terrible impact on the people of the valley, but also it speaks of the impartiality rendered on marginal mans like Dalits, Adivasis, workers, farmers, and backward class people. The present situation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on September 17 travelled to Kevadia and inaugurated this Sardar Sarovar Dam on Narmada River on the event of his 67th birthday. Prime Minister Modi performed rituals on the bank of Narmada River and offered flowers and prayers for the dam site before inauguration. The Prime Minister claimed that the western part of India still lacks sufficient water supply and therefore has a shortage of electricity and gas supply too. He asserted that when the World Bank has denied the fund to build the Sardar Sarovar Dam, the saints and seers of Gujarat donated money to enable this grand task. He also thanked the Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Chauhan and his Maharashtra counterpart Devendra Fadnavis for their benevolence for initiating this project. Modi was quite sure that the project would establish a new India by the year 2022 when we would be celebrating our 75th in freedom struggle. The Water Resources and River Development Minister said that people of four states will fetch fresh drinking water and this water will benefit around 4 crore people. That would accelerate the earning of the farmers in many times by the year 2022. At the same time, the government was also optimistic that the dam would aid irrigation of across 22 lakh hectares of land. The Sardar Sarovar project officials were enthusiastic that this project would irrigate around 246,000 hectares of land in the dominantly desert regions of Barmar and Jalore, and also 37,500 hectares of tribal hill regions of Maharashtra. On the same day, activist Medha Patkar organized Jal Satyagraha in the rising waters of Narmada at Chota Barda Ghat in Barwani district of Madhya Pradesh. Patkar was apprehensive that the water level of the dam is rising to dangerous height and it would soon submerge the all 192 villages in the region. It would affect around 40,000 families. That Patkar has alleged that the affected families will soon be rendered homeless and would be deprived of any kind of rehabilitation, compensation in spite of strict orders from the High Court. Patkar, along with 30 women-led organization, sat on the banks of this Narmada river at Chota Barda Ghat village near Dhar, where she insisted that water levels were rising to a fatal level. Now let us come to the National Water Conservation Policy. At the meeting of National Water Resource Council held on April 1, 2002, a new Water Conservation Policy 2002 came into being. In this meeting, the old policy of 1987 was revised. This was the outcome of series of discussion on the subject which was initiated by the government. During the late 1990s, an attempt to revise this national water policy of 1987 was undertaken. A draft was placed in front of NWRC at its fourth meeting held on July 7th in the year 2000. However, the draft failed to bring any consensus among the state governments. It comes under the jurisdiction of a group of ministers belonging from both central and state government, and therefore the group had to have a several number of meetings before they could finally submit the draft on April 1st, 2002. The new policy document, however, failed to go beyond the provision of 1987 document. It is still focusing on the so-called projects, as for example, building up of big dams. In 2002, the policy documented these writings were overemphasized. The most important weakness that this policy showed was that the document was undermining two most important issues that was discussed widely in media and in academic circle, which was the water harvesting and community management. One could not find any appreciation of the idea of water harvesting in that policy document. Similarly, the idea of community management of common property resources was also largely neglected. The point was totally undermined in the policy document. Emphasis on buzzwords like participation, water use, association, stakeholders was only to a context of big projects. The only reference of community occurs in the last paragraph of the policy documents, which was only added after the Prime Minister's speech. The document says, concern of community needs to be taken into account in water resource development and management. This statement is pretty weak as it has got nothing to do with community management in apt sense of the word. It was noted that this weak sentence was not added in the draft when it was submitted in the NWRC meeting. Neither there were any clarity of opinion regarding whether to use water as a commodity or water as commons. The activists like Rajendra Singh questioned that the very credibility of this policy document. Now let us come to another quiz. What is the full form of NWRC? Option A, National Waste Resources Council. Option B, National Water Reuse Council. Option C, National Winter Resources Council, and option D, National Water Resources Council. And yes, the correct answer is option D, National Water Resources Council. Now let's look at some of the other aspects and struggles for water security. The Madhya Pradesh government has made numerous attempts to create a cooperative relation between state and civil society to tackle these kind of water crises. In the Jal Abhishek campaign or a people's movement for water conservation, the community became an active participant for water conservation. The strategic component of this movement included tasks like to work out on the concept of community, that it should take initiative and that governments should facilitate these kind of initiatives. Number two, extensive publicity in rural areas and enhancing awareness about the need of water conservation and sense of responsibility in the rural population. To put in place a village level institutional framework for providing leadership to the rural communities and building their capacities. Point 4, to evolve an institutionalized mechanism of government to provide cooperation and guidance to the community, as this would not be the nature of administration or controller but a nature of facilitator or animator. And point 5, to plan and execute village-wise water conservation activities in the following manner by convergence of financial resources available under various governmental schemes and departments. Now, these kind of movements were not seeking any kind of support from the state, but this perspective was although unconvinced about the role of the state in the society because of the presence of this neoliberal stage of capitalism. However, these kind of movement showed a great impact in the civil societies. As for example, Rajendra Singh's Rashtriya Jal Chetana Yatra or National Water Awareness Campaign can be posited in this context. However, there are attempts to preserve groundwater without any support from government, but these activities are purely based on voluntary activism. A common example can be Osmanabad, a district in southern Maharashtra which faced severe drought in last 3 consecutive years. The only relief was the tanker water which was supplied by the local government authorities. In March 2004, the Osmanabad District Administration, along with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, launched Pani Yatra in order to create awareness among local people about the importance of protecting the groundwater levels. The Yatra passed through 40 villages in the district and conveyed the message of importance of preserving the groundwater. The Yatra carried with it a kalash or a pot containing water collected from the local well. The Pani Yatra was supported by around 40 NGOs. The volunteers appraised the villagers about the significance of protecting the groundwater level. With the assistance of NGOs, the desiltification of wells in some villages also started. Rainwater harvesting has also been started to be introduced, and through Government Employment Guarantee Scheme or EGS, compartment bounding to retain water has begun. Workshops for village panchayats and workshops organized by village sarpans on the importance of water conservation was also conducted. Now, in conclusion, we can say that the kind of development which was designed to set up the Narmada Valley project was not suitable for a country like India. Sociologists have time and again argued on different topics like this. Development has started to become polarized in absence of any form of decentralized structures such as class benefits at a cost of others, leading to the pauperization of the masses. The real question comes is whether this dam could create resources for the society or whether it drained away the already created wealth in the country, making economy and society more fragile than before. However, various other policies like the National Water Policy, the Rashtriya Jal Chetana Yatra by both government and individuals and NGOs can help in raising awareness and saving water eventually. Thank you.